Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to dig into the mind of Elon Musk. We're talking about his core philosophy, right? How does this guy tackle problems that, to most of us, just seem completely impossible? We're going to use his own words to figure it out.
All right, so let's jump right in. And we're not going to start with his first company or anything like that. No, we're starting with the big one, his ultimate mission, the why behind everything. We're talking rockets, AI, you name it. And it really all comes down to this one single powerful idea.
Yeah, that right there, that single idea basically frames his entire worldview. For him, conscious intelligence, us, it's this incredibly precious, super fragile thing, a tiny spark in this massive, dark universe. And he believes we have to do everything we can to protect it and make sure it expands. And this leads him to something that genuinely keeps him up at night, the Fermi paradox. Where is everybody? The fact that the universe is just silent, it suggests to him that maybe, just maybe, intelligent life like ours is ridiculously rare. So for Musk, this isn't some fun little thought experiment. No, it's the core reason he's pushing so hard to make humanity a multiplanetary species. It's the backup plan, right? The insurance policy for that little candle of consciousness. Okay, so you've got this huge galaxy-spanning vision, but how does that connect with where he started? I mean, it was a pretty scrappy beginning. Let's rewind the clock a bit, back to 1995, to a choice that really set him on this path. So picture this. It's 1995. He's at Stanford, all set to start a PhD. And get this, it was on advanced capacitors for electric vehicles. Kinda prescient, right? But then there's this new thing called the internet that's just exploding, and he feels like he's at a crossroads. Does he sit in a lab and watch it happen, or does he jump in and actually help build it? Well, he bet on the internet, told Stanford he'd defer for a quarter, and yeah, he never went back. And when I say scrappy, I mean scrappy. Their first office in Palo Alto, $500 a month. So to save cash, he and his brother just lived there, slept in the office, they'd go shower at the local YMCA, and the best part, they couldn't afford a proper high-speed internet line, so what do? They literally drilled a hole through the floor to snake a cable down to the internet company on the floor below them. Now that is the definition of hustle. Now, Zip2 ended up being a big financial win, but for Musk, there was a huge lesson there. He felt like its real potential got kneecapped by his investors. These were guys from old-school media companies. They were on his board, and he felt like they just didn't get the tech. They were forcing him to use it in ways that just made no sense to him. And he walked away from that thinking, okay, I am never making that mistake again, never giving up that kind of control. All right, so after Zip2 and, of course, the massive success of PayPal, he finally has the cash, real capital, enough to go after the really, really big problems. But think about it. How on earth do you decide to take on industries like aerospace and automotive? I mean, these are fortresses, completely impenetrable for a newcomer. Well, it all comes down to a very specific way of thinking. And this is it. This is the key to the whole playbook. It's called first principles thinking. It's the absolute core of how he solves problems. See, most people reason by analogy. We say, well, this is how it's always been done, so we'll just do a slightly better version of that. He does the opposite. He uses physics to break a problem all the way down to its most fundamental, undeniable truths, the absolute basics. And then, from that clean slate, he builds the solution back up. Rockets are the perfect example. Reasoning by analogy says a rocket costs, hundreds of millions of dollars. That's just the price. End of story. But with first principles, Musk asked a totally different question. What is a rocket actually made of? So he went and priced out the raw materials, the aluminum, the copper, the carbon fiber, and what he found was just mind-blowing. The raw materials were only 1 or 2% of the final ticket price. That huge gap told him everything. It meant that rockets weren't inherently expensive. The way we were building them was just insanely inefficient. And he has this great line about it. He says you just can't fool math and physics. He sees them as the ultimate, most rigorous judges. See, when you're building hardware, when you're writing code that has to work, you're forced into what he calls a maximally truth-seeking environment. It's not like business or politics, where you can kind of talk your way around a problem. Nope, you cannot negotiate with the laws of physics. They force you, kicking and screaming, to face reality. So when you boil it all down, his core advice, it's not what you'd expect. It's not about having some grand vision or chasing fame. It's about being useful, being humble, staying grounded. He talks a lot about smashing your ego, keeping that ego to ability ratio low. Because he argues that the second your ego gets too big, you stop listening. You break your feedback loop with reality. And that's the moment you start to fail.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how did this playbook actually hold up when things got really, really tough? Let's talk about the most brutal year of his entire career, a year that came this close to ending both Tesla and SpaceX for good.
I mean, you have to remember, the press was just relentless. They called him the internet guy trying to build rockets and cars. And he admits it. He said it sounded completely absurd. He was getting mocked left and right. In fact, he gave SpaceX a 90% chance of failure right from the start. And, well, the first 3 launches did fail. Catastrophically.
So we get to the middle of 2008, and it is a total disaster. Everything is falling apart. SpaceX has just had its 3rd launch in a row fail. All the money is gone. At the exact same time, the global financial crisis hits like a freight train, and Tesla's make-or-break funding round just collapses. Both companies were basically in a death spiral, heading straight for bankruptcy.
Then, against all odds, the 4th SpaceX launch works. It actually gets to orbit. But that wasn't enough. They were still out of cash. They needed a big contract to survive. And then, just days before Christmas, he gets a call. It's NASA. They're awarding SpaceX a massive, life-saving contract to resupply the International Space Station. And his reaction on the phone, totally unfiltered, was just, "I love you guys."
And if you think that was close, listen to this. The Tesla funding round? It finally came together at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The absolute very last possible hour of the last possible day. If that deal had not closed right then, Tesla would have bounced payroll 2 days after Christmas. It would have been over. I mean, he made it by the absolute skin of his teeth.
And all of that, the failures, the near misses, it brings us right back around full circle to what he sees as his main quest now, and that's navigating the future of intelligence itself. A challenge that, in his mind, is bigger and more important than anything else he's ever done. He has this incredible metaphor to explain why he's suddenly shifted so much of his focus to AI. He says, imagine you're on a beach. There are other important problems, sure. That's like cleaning up the litter on the beach. But what does any of that matter if you see a 1,000-foot tsunami about to crash down on you? For him, that tsunami is artificial superintelligence. And this is just a perfect real-world example of first principles in action, like right now. For his new AI company, xAI, he needed a massive supercomputer, a huge cluster of GPUs. The suppliers all told him, yeah, that'll take 2 years. He said, nope. We have 6 months. So they just broke it down from first principles. Step 1, find a building. They found a shuttered factory in Memphis. Step 2, power. They rented a ton of giant generators. Step 3, cooling. They rented like a quarter of the entire country's mobile cooling capacity. Step 4, use Tesla megapacks to even out the power surges. It was this brute force engineering blitz that got something done in 6 months that everyone said was impossible.
Now, he worries a lot about AI safety, but his take on it is different. For him, the biggest danger isn't some evil, rogue AI like in the movies. No, the real danger, he believes, is an AI that has been programmed to lie. An AI that's been forced to believe and say things that just aren't true. So his goal for xAI is to build a maximally truth-seeking AI, one that has a rigorous, unwavering commitment to the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. That, in his view, is the safest path forward.
And this is the really wild, provocative thought he leaves us with. He asks, are we just the biological bootloader for digital superintelligence? Think about that. In a future that he thinks is not very far away, all of human intelligence, all of our brains combined, could be less than 1% of the total intelligence on this planet. It completely reframes our purpose, right? Maybe our ultimate role in the cosmos is just to kickstart the next, much greater form of consciousness. And what happens after that? Well, that's a question nobody has the answer to.